which has become less tolerant. As recently as 20 years ago, the traditional cat and mouse game between hobo and bull prevailed. As long as you weren't a total jerk and you got off when he told you to and climbed back on when he wasn't looking, as long as it looked like he was keeping tramps out of the yard, everything was fine, says an old-timer I know named North Bank Fred. Now it's totally different. Todd Waters, a former marketing executive who goes by Ad Man on the rails and free-range human being in his emails, complains that now they'll even chase you when it's raining, and more often than not, send you to jail if they catch you. Employees who used to help the hobo on his way, brakemen, track crews, now actively turn him in. Citizens sometimes call police or regional railroad offices on cell phones when they spot a hobo at a railroad crossing. I still take the occasional pleasure trip. A few years ago I rode with Todd Waters across the Rocky Mountains on the Canadian Pacific. Somehow, the engineer of a Canadian National train across the river saw our heads through the windows of the rear locomotive we were in. Soon the train stopped, and Todd and I were busted by a Mountie. Some blame corporate consolidation for these changes. Over the past few years, the Union Pacific Railroad has absorbed the Southern Pacific, the Western Pacific, and the Denver and Rio Grande Western. Burlington Northern swallowed up the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe. Canadian National is acquiring the Wisconsin Central as I write. These corporations control not just railroads, but trucking, high-tech, oil and gas, and hotel companies, and decisions are made by people who aren't a part of the tradition. Southern Pacific was a railroad, and Union Pacific is a corporation, complains North Bank Fred. That oversimplifies things, but only somewhat. The hobo's world, not to mention his image, has also been darkened by a couple of serial killers who traveled the rails since the days of my journey. Robert Joseph Silveria, road name Sidetrack, is thought to have killed a dozen railroad tramps over 15 years before he was apprehended in 1996. Worse from a public relations point of view, railcar killer Angel Maturino Resendiz used the rails to murder up to 9 people who lived near railroad yards back in the late 1990s, which created tremendous pressure on companies to curb the travels of unauthorized riders. When I wrote this book, hobos could still get extra allotments of food stamps by applying multiple times in different train towns: Marysville, California, Everett, Washington, and Havre, Montana, for example. That scam kept a lot of people on the move, but tighter food stamp regulations have changed things. Most able-bodied adults without dependents, ABODs in federal parlance, are now cut off after 3 months unless they find a job. But probably the worst thing for modern hobo life has been America's prosperity. The greatest peacetime economic expansion in history, as Bill Clinton and Al Gore called it, without question shrank the ranks of the homeless and the unemployed. If train crews are a little less helpful to the guys they find in their yards, it may be because when they look at them they don't see themselves dispossessed, but rather recreational riders. Los Angeles actor Bud Hopkins often hit the rails with a guitar in the late 80s and early 90s, and made it into many newspapers too. Or a newer wave of nose-ring nation people, as North Bank Fred calls them. Punks, radical environmentalists, and other disaffected youth, with chains and mohawks and stuff. Scrawled in chalk on the railroad underpass in Seattle is no longer, "Portland Slim was here," but "Anarchy rules." The hobo idea still resonates in articles about these modern-day riders and in memoirs by old-timers, but the world of hobos with road names who cooked in jungles with gunboats, coffee cans, is a thing of the past, and Rolling Nowhere is now, I suppose, a historical document. As for me, Rolling Nowhere remains the adventure that changed my life. The week before my college graduation, as I was packing my bags for a job at the Indianapolis Star, 2 calls came in quick succession from people claiming to represent the Today Show and Good Morning America. They'd seen a wire story about my travels, they said, and wanted to fly me to New York. It seemed so unlikely that I accused the second caller of playing a prank. But the tickets arrived, I went to New York, and, armed with evidence that people out there might want to read a book about my experience, I found a literary